You're listening to Ricky and Jimmy on Relationships, the show where we uncover the thoughts and behaviors that are sabotaging your relationship and what you can do about it. Jimmy and I are passionate about sharing the ways that imperfect partners like you and I can shift unhealthy relational dynamics and create closeness. So welcome. Drop your defenses and open your heart, eyes, and ears. Let's learn how to be the best partner we can be together. Thanks for joining us today. Jimmy and I are back. Today's episode is going to be about abuse. And if I sound a little hesitant, it's probably because this is kind of a charged episode for me too. I know, because I know myself, that I lean a little bit too far on the side of compassion and personal responsibility. And because I'm so far on that side, I tend to make a lot of excuses for other people and not stand up for myself as much. I don't like confrontation with somebody who's actually making abusive, harmful behavior toward me. And so, the research that it took to get to this episode was a little tough for me, but I think that's why it's great that I'm having this conversation with you, Jimmy, because you're a little bit different than I am on this topic. Let our audience know what side you're on with it.
Well, I'm both. So I agree with everything that you said, and I'm nodding along because like you described me. But I take it a little bit farther than you, where you are still rightly so empathetic and compassionate and inward looking, where it's like, okay, well, how am I contributing to the dynamic here? What can I do? And I love that. And I think that is actually extremely important. Like, how am I contributing to the dynamic? We preach constantly personal accountability on this channel, and we want everybody to be self-reflective. However, it's like two truths, like holding one as self-reflection. The other one is sometimes people that are so inward focused and so empathetic, we tend to minimize and dismiss and downplay and overlook hurtful behavior because we're like, well, how did I contribute to that? And what could I do to help change this? And sometimes we don't just flat out say, you know what? That was inexcusable. That's unacceptable behavior. And to be honest with you, we're going to be talking about abuse, but at the end of the day, I'm sure Ricky would agree that sometimes it doesn't matter if we define something as abuse, because even if we took it to if you actually took that to an abusive person and you said, hey, I've decided that what you're doing is abusive and here's why I'm, doing this and that, they're never going to agree with you. So at the end of the day, this isn't about convincing your partner that they're abusive. This is all about you. This is all about you deciding, you know what, regardless of whether this meets perfect criteria for abuse, I've decided this is not something where I can feel safe and connected in a relationship. And so I'm setting a new standard of how I want to be treated in this area. I will not be yelled at. I don't care if you don't think your yelling is abusive. It doesn't actually matter. You came from a family of yellers. Great. I find it to be hurtful. So if you continue doing something that's hurtful, this is just something that I'm setting a standard for. I don't want to be in a relationship where someone yells at me. So, and there's 100 of those examples, but the point is that sometimes you just need to point out, hey, what you're doing is hurtful. I can see why you maybe do it from your past. I can see the reasons why it's not necessarily something you're doing intentionally, maybe, but that doesn't change the fact that it's hurting me and you're refusing to stop. Therefore, it's all about personal empowerment.
Yeah, that's amazing. My very favorite thing that I gathered from all the research that I did in preparation for this episode was the idea that like you just said, it doesn't matter if somebody else doesn't think that they're hurting us. We need to have a list for ourselves of things that are unacceptable and don't work for us, that they're not up for debate. That list is our own. It's something that we feel really good about, really strongly about. And I saw a really great piece of advice that if you're having trouble making that list, which you might be if you're somebody who tends toward being kind of a victim in a relationship, it's a great idea to try to make that list imagining that you're single. What a great thought experiment that is too, because when you're imagining that you're single, you don't have to worry about the other person's habits or things that you've been excusing for them. Imagining that you're single just gives you kind of a blank slate. You can make that list of acceptable and unacceptable behaviors and things for yourself. And yeah, it's coming from your truest wants and needs that don't have anything to do with anyone else, right?
I couldn't love that more. It's so important because once we get into a committed relationship, once we feel bonded to this person, we can overlook a lot of things. And so that's kind of the problem in relationships in general, is because you are going to have to overlook some things. And us people pleasers and us people that, what do you call past anxious attachers? What do you call them? You call them healed secure, but like,
earned secure. Yeah.
Earned secure.
Yeah.
But us us that have struggled in the past with anxious attachment, or some people might call it toxic empathy. I don't know if I like that term or not. But but the point is that you're going to have to overlook some things in your relationship, because, and we'll talk about it in a minute, like you're going to have conflicts. Things are going to go off the line. Heated things are going to get said that are in the heat of the moment. You're going to have to forgive some things, but people that are in abusive relationships have a tendency to forgive things that they need. We all need people like us who are like, hey, there's certain things that you shouldn't be having to struggle with in your relationship. If this is going on, this is a big deal. This isn't something that you should just consistently overlook because, well, relationships are hard, right? And love is a sacrifice, and love is all about forgiveness. Okay, those are true. And it can also be true in the same way that, like, there are certain things that only destroy a relationship and you should never tolerate them consistently, because that's not going to lead you anywhere good in a relationship.
Absolutely not. I want you to know too, if you're listening to this and you're feeling a little called out or feeling guilty for being that way, that I personally am someone who have been approached many, many times in my life by friends who were saying, hey, Ricky, I noticed some interactions with you and your significant other that I'm really uncomfortable with. And I wanted to talk to you about that and see if that works for you, if you're comfortable with it, or if you might want to talk to somebody about it. I lost count. I lost count of how many times I was approached by friends in many different relationships. This was a pattern for me, of excusing people's behavior in the name of compassion or throwing them a bone, or, being overly understanding about behavior that absolutely did hurt and didn't work for me. But I either didn't have the guts to stand up for it, or sometimes I just straight up didn't recognize that it was hurtful behavior.
Yeah. Thank you for talking about that. I know that's extremely vulnerable to say. And there's so many people that there's a lot of, if you could see the audience right now, there's so many people that resonate, me being one of them. Like, yes. That's what we want at the end of the day. We just want you to feel like you have a stronger sense of, like Ricky said, recognizing the patterns that we shouldn't just overlook. But also, on the other side, we shouldn't be so quick to just label everything as like, abuse and mistreatment because because somebody yelled at you once. That's not we're talking about a pattern of behavior that's intentionally hurtful, that this person refuses to stop. But we also want to call that out. We don't want to. So we're trying to find the nuance here. We don't want to call out everything, because it's kind of like when you label everything as trauma, nothing really becomes trauma. Like, everybody suffers trauma. Yeah. It's like, but some people really went through some. So we want to be compassionate to both of those. Well,
here's another great addition to what you just said. When I look at my own past with my partners, I see ways that I've been abusive. Right? So if we just want to throw every single instance under the category of abuse, throw that person out with that and say, oh, that person committed this act that I consider abusive. They're a terrible person. They don't deserve love. I'd have to put myself in that category too, because I've said and done things to partners that definitely hurt them. And I have had terrible intentions when I said and did those things. Nobody's perfect, right? We're not looking for a perfect person who never commits any sort of act that hurts anyone. That I don't think that exists. But at the same time, there are some things that we want you to look out for that are not okay, might signal a relationship that you don't want to be in, or at least a relationship that needs some serious talks about what is acceptable and what's not.
Yeah, I love it. Where should we go from here? Because by God, there's so many different avenues we could go.
A lot. But we could do examples. Do you want examples of...
I was thinking of like maybe a broad definition just to like help people. We've kind of already covered it, but what did I write down here? Okay. This is a broad definition of abuse, in my opinion, a pattern of behavior, especially when it comes to power and control. In most of these abusive relationships, it is the abusive person does not think that they're an equal with their partner.
Right.
They think that there is an intent to gain power and control of a dominance in this relationship. Anytime there's dominance, anytime there's a power dynamic, it's ripe for abuse, obviously. So that's one of our major things. I mean, Ricky and I'm sure both just can't stand the idea of a power dynamic in a relationship. One person should not feel like they're being dominated. That's just not, there's no room for that. A pattern of behavior used to gain power or control that erodes the other person's sense of safety, freedom, or self-worth, and completely disregards that their actions are hurtful to another person.
That's a good one.
So,
That's it.
I mean,
Jimmy,
it's broad.
Did you run across a lot of definitions? Because I did. When I was looking this up, I saw
I didn't
it seemed
do
like there
very
were
much research.
Oh, okay. You know me, I over prep for
You're
this,
good.
of course.
Yeah, you're a good researcher.
I ran into lots of definitions. So something that I saw that I really enjoyed, I hope this isn't too vague because I liked it because I felt like it covered a lot. It defined abusive behavior as something that someone does to try to get change from somebody else, regardless of their feelings on it. And I know that sounds really vague, but when I started applying it to a lot of different situations, I was like, what a fantastic definition for it, because it doesn't, it completely goes around the need for us to go, did they do that on purpose? You know, that's nice. Right. When if someone in my past had tried to, I don't know, get me to stop hanging out with a certain person, right? That, and there's my dog. I hope you don't have to edit that out, Jimmy.
It's fine.
The mailman's probably here. Okay.
Right.
So if someone in my past had tried to get me to not hang out with a certain person, that's them trying to enact some sort of change in behavior from me, regardless of how I feel about it. Now that's not somebody
like a
trying to be
for manipulation.
Totally. But also that's abusive. I mean, that's technically the internet was trying to tell me that's abusive behavior. You're trying to control someone. You're trying to make some sort of change in them, regardless of their feelings on the matter. It doesn't matter if I really care about that person and want to hang out with them. All they care about is what they want for it. Right.
So I want to talk for a second about how, like, we're all going to struggle with conflict in our relationship. And oftentimes these patterns come up during conflict. So if we could just talk about how some conflicts have toxicity to them, but they're not necessarily abusive, versus a pattern of, like, how does someone know, like, oh, this isn't just a normal conflict cycle that people get stuck in. Like, I think this is more.
Yeah, I think that'd be really helpful, Jimmy. Do you have a good example to lead us off with?
Yeah. So, well, for me, one of them goes back to the dominating factor that we were talking about. So if somebody's dominating, if you don't feel it's a red flag or a clue, if you're like, well, first, I can't even bring something up to this person. So we're already working from a, like, you should feel safe to bring up something to your partner. If you don't feel safe to bring something up to your partner, that's our first clue that something's wrong. Doesn't mean something's abusive, but like something's not right in this relationship. If you don't feel like, I'm just not going to bring it up because it would just start a fight. Well, that's a dangerous thing. Okay. But back to where things go off the rails. Let's say you do bring it up, but every time you bring it up, you get, or every time you do bring a concern or a complaint or a feeling up, you get belittled, especially, let's start on the extreme end of the spectrum. Belittling language, there's just no room for it. You should never be yelled at, called names, told that you're stupid. Belittling and demeaning language is just the hallmark of verbal abuse. And so this isn't something that we should overlook. Well, everybody gets into fights, like every couple of fights, like
Right.
it's a big deal. You should never hear those words. That doesn't mean the last thing I'll say before I want to hear what you have to say about it, but that doesn't mean that sometimes it's not going to happen in some relationships. But the crux of whether or not we can come back from this is, can that person recognize that behavior was wrong? I'm taking full accountability for it. I want to know how it impacted you. Here's what I'm going to do instead of that behavior. This is an area where I struggle with. I get heated during conflicts, but I'm remorseful and repentant versus I don't really care how it affects you. This is just the way I am. Or that's not that maybe that's not the best way to handle it, but I'm not planning on changing. Like, that's where it gets to be something that we can navigate together as a couple if we're moving in a positive direction versus just this is abusive behavior. Somebody talking to you that way.
Yeah, that's great, Jimmy. It reminds me of a quote that I stumbled upon when I was looking up stuff for this episode. It comes from the Love and Abuse podcast. It says, in a healthy relationship, you don't wonder if they meant to hurt you or not. And I was thinking about that quote when you were saying that just now, because I know that in arguments and fights, for sure, I let things fly that I'm not proud of in the heat of the moment. But I do have a lot of remorse for saying those things. And I apologize to my partner because I don't intend to hurt him or bring him down with my words. That's, one of the ways that I know that my relationship with my husband is actually great, even though we do say things occasionally that we really wish we could take back. These aren't premeditated things that we've planned out, to deliver with a barbed tongue. That's not what we're trying to do to each other. Obviously, people are going to say things during fights that suck a lot to hear, and they're hard to apologize for also afterwards. But that remorse afterwards, you can see that you can tell when someone genuinely feels awful for the thing that they said. It's really important. And I think by giving that example, you were trying to show the audience that you've got a certain camp of people who may be saying things to hurt you regularly and control you. But then you've got another camp of people who are probably, they totally love you. And sometimes they say some stuff that they really wish they could take back. And right.
Yeah.
I butchered that for sure, but
no. And
that's a tough one.
It is very tough. And that's why it goes back to at the beginning, what we were saying, which is sometimes you can get stuck in being like, well, are they abusive or not?
Right.
Well,
right.
Sometimes it's better just to focus on the behavior. Like Ricky was saying, like if you were single and you were like, would I ever want a partner to consistently call me stupid, call me, curse at me, yell at me? Well, no, we would never want that. We would never equate that with love. And so if that's where we're at, then we need to ask ourselves, like, I don't really care whether or not this is abusive anymore. I mean, although I care about whether or not you're being abused, but I don't really care if this meets perfect criteria for abuse. I don't like it. It doesn't make me feel safe. It doesn't make me feel loved. And so, this is an area that has to change. And people that are stuck in abusive relationships, that is a really difficult thing for me just to say that, well, what do you want me to do? You want me to just go up and tell them, like, hey, I don't accept this behavior anymore. That's why this thing is so layered, because like, first of all, there's most likely a power dynamic at play. So you going up to that person and being like, hey, I don't like the way that you treat me. You would never do that, because you're like, well, that's going to end in disaster, Jimmy. Like you don't even understand what that might. I mean, we might. I mean, physical abuse is easy to define. Like we all can see physical abuse, but emotional abuse and psychological abuse, like oftentimes we can't see it, and we're not here to weigh which one is worse. they're all terrible, and we don't want anyone to have to go through them. But I'm just saying, from the outside, we can't see the emotional abuse that you have to endure and the psychological abuse that you have to endure. And so, and it oftentimes kind of drives you a little crazy, because you're like, maybe I'm just like overthinking this. You know what I mean? Because you don't have the physical symptoms. So you're like, so it's like, oh, maybe I'm just overthinking this.
Totally. I wanted to interject here too and say, if you come from a background where emotional or verbal abuse is the norm, it might be really tough for you to even recognize that what's happening is abuse. So no wonder you're either questioning yourself, was that abusive, or is that totally fine? Or it just floats past you and you don't even recognize it as a problem.
Yeah. Or like you said, you're used to dealing with some of that stuff. And it's really sad when you get to that point when you're used to dealing with stuff like that. I mean, that breaks both of our hearts, that anybody would be in a situation like that where they're just used to that type of behavior, or even if they're not used to it, they're used to excusing it. Like, well,
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I just
making excuses for it.
Making excuse that, and that's so hard. Yeah. So it's so important. And you know what? One of the hardest parts about all this is, even if someone is in, I was talking to Ricky earlier about trauma bonds. Even if somebody is in a situation where they're like, I recognize that this person is mistreating me. I was in a relationship. I was in multiple relationships where I knew this person was mistreating me, and I still didn't leave, Ricky. So sometimes it's not information. You don't need more information. That's what's so hard about all this, is like you in abusive relationships, it's so tricky, because if you're talking to the abuser, if you're like, hey, you need to stop doing this, you need to, like, this is bad behavior, they're not going to listen to you, because they are entitled, they are arrogant, they are prideful, there's a power dynamic. They think that they're entitled to treat this person however they want to, and that's terrible. But then on the other side, even if you're telling the other person, like, hey, you got to get out, this is bad, they're mistreating you, that person probably knows that they're being mistreated, but they can't, it doesn't feel like they have the power to walk away. And that's what's so sad. That's another layer to this, is like, it's not just recognizing the symptoms, which is important, because some people are stuck in these situations and don't know the signs, and we want to help them to recognize the signs. This is not okay. There's some people that do recognize the signs, and they still can't find the power to leave, you know? Yeah.
Or to do something to change what's happening.
Yeah.
You know?
Or to do, because it's so scary.
Oh, it's so scary. Maybe a little ray of hope, though. I have found in my very personal experience, that may not translate to everyone else, that almost every time that I put my foot down against a behavior that I noticed didn't work for me, it went well for me. And that's not to say that the other person said, oh, you're right, I was being absolutely horrible and I'll never do that again. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying, when I made the other person aware that the thing that was happening was just not something that I could allow for myself, and that I would be doing XYZ steps so that that thing was not something I was exposed to anymore, it went well, because usually that person cared about me a lot and had a connection with me that they didn't want to lose. And putting my foot down about it, or at least making both of us aware of what was happening, helped to change the dynamic a lot.
Yeah.
So that's good. I just want to give you guys some hope. I know that a lot of you are shaking your head right now going, well, that's not my relationship and that's not how it goes. But not all of the behaviors that we see mean that somebody is horrible and we should be focusing on leaving them. That's what I'm trying to say, you know?
Yeah. I can see both so clearly, and I hope that the audience can see both of those too.
I hope so too.
Yeah. However, it is important to note, in not opposite of what you said, but like in addition to what you said, if you do find yourself, if you are one of those people that you're coming to the realization that you are in an abusive relationship, I do have someone that dominates over me, I do have someone that is aggressive towards me and cruel towards me and completely unrepentant, refuses to take any accountability, I don't feel safe in this relationship, then Ricky would agree that the solution is not standing up for yourself. The solution is not, I've decided to set some healthy boundaries with you. The only boundary that you need to be setting is removing yourself from unsafe environments like that. So there's a spectrum that we're talking about here, and Ricky and I are weaving in and out of it, and we want to be very clear because this is such a nuanced and sensitive topic that that there's different advice for different people on the spectrum, obviously. So
absolutely. And you kind of get, you listener kind of get to decide where you're at on that spectrum. You know, it could be a very small amount of verbal abuse, for example, that makes you go, you know what, this relationship is not for me. And it also could be what you realize is a really giant amount of abuse that you're like, wow, I need to really do something different to get myself out of here. I want to try to encourage everyone to make their list however feels good for them, you know, because it is ultimately up to you to decide how much is too much for you to stand, you know?
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I think it's important for me to list again that with truly abusive people, they do have an intent to belittle and demean and devalue you and make you feel small. And there's no place for that in a relationship. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So if you hear things like, I'm just trying to think of some examples, like nobody would put up with you. If if you ever broke up with me, or if you ever left, nobody would put up with you. Like nobody puts up with you like I do. Like that kind of stuff. That's just another way that they can manipulate us into, because people that get caught in these types of relationships have a tendency to feel a lot of shame about themselves. They're not sure. They're not sure if they really deserve to be prioritized, and they don't know if they really deserve to be. It's so much easier for them to serve rather than be served, and we get trapped in forgetting that like you deserve to be prioritized, and you never deserve to be talked down to and belittled, and nobody should say stuff like that to you consistently. I'm not saying it's okay if it happens once in a blue moon, but like Ricky said, sometimes we all say things. I've said things to my wife in the heat of the moment that I had to go back and repent for, but repentance meant I am so sorry for what I said because I recognize that was wrong. I should not have said that. And I want to hear how it impacted you, because I would imagine it hurt pretty bad. And here's how I'm not there. There have been things that I have said to my wife that I have never said again. That's repentance. I haven't said that in years. So it's not about never making a mistake. It's not about being a perfect human. It's all about, do I have the capability to actually repair and repent? And I was trying to think of another R word, but it didn't come out. And then do something differently. You know what I mean? And that's what makes all the difference. So don't get hung up on like, you know, does this meet criteria for abuse? Like, cause people that are trapped in these relationships, we're so easily, it's almost like we gaslight ourselves, you know? I don't want to make too big of a deal about this. I don't want to, you think that you have to, you think you're in a courtroom and you think, well, the next time they say this, I'm going to tell them that that behavior is unacceptable, or whatever the case may be. You feel like you have to make a huge case, and you feel like you have to make an airtight case. This is the last thing I'm going to say, and then I want to hear what you say about Ricky. But just remember, because we forget so quickly, that you deserve someone who wants to hear and understand your pain just as much as you want to find the perfect words so that they don't feel attacked. Like, both are true. So don't get caught up on only one side. I need to come up with the perfect words, or else what? Or else they won't listen to you, or else they're going to dismiss and invalidate you. That's not an equal relationship. That's not a healthy relationship. You shouldn't have to find the perfect words for somebody to not call you stupid, not to say your ideas, your thoughts, your feelings are stupid. You're irrational. That's not, don't get stuck in that dynamic. Don't get stuck in that like closed loop of thinking. That's not a real relationship.
Yeah. It made me think too. I want to add an amendment to something I said earlier. Sometimes when I try to put my foot down about something that I know doesn't work for me, it also goes very badly in that the other person doesn't seem to understand why I would put my foot down about that. And I kind of don't care whether he gets it or not. Clearly, I'm talking about my husband, but it's sometimes if it goes badly, for me, it doesn't matter if he's on board with it or not. I can still put a full stop on something. I can say, hey, the way that you said that totally doesn't work for me. And we're not going to talk like that again. Yeah. And even if he's huffy about it or doesn't seem to get it in the moment, I kind of don't care, because that's one of the hallmarks of setting a boundary is I don't need other people to do anything different. I just know, all right, I'm letting you know that if that thing happens just like that again, I'm not going to be in the room for that. I will be outside of the room.
And how long did it take you to get to that point? Because when you're struggling with anxious attachment, that's so like long. That's it feels impossible.
Stuff. Yeah. This is advanced stuff, but he does usually come back around later, realizing that if I needed it that badly that I put my foot down so hard, it was like, must be really important to me. But it's hard for your partner to get that in the moment, especially during conflict when things are all heated up. But what a wonderful place to get to, where you feel so good about that list of what you will and won't accept that you'll stand by it even when your partner is not responding to it well,
Yeah. Another point I wanted to make, there's so many different points in this episode. I hope people are following along. I hope this is resonating with some of you. Is we talk a lot about intent when it comes down to abuse. You're going to, if you look up definitions of abuse, like you're going to see a lot of intent. There's an intent to manipulate. There's an intent to control. There's an intent to diminish or demean or silence. And the truth is, one of the problems with that is you don't know your partner's intent. And so that's why it's so important. All the things that we've talked about, sometimes that's why it's so important for you to just set a standard of what you know is what feels good for you. Because you don't know their intent. You can't know their intent. So you're going to struggle with
Jimmy.
that. Yeah.
What a perfect way to put that. Abuse, the dialogue about it online talks about its intent a lot. And I love what you just said. It kind of doesn't matter because we can't mind read, right? Like you decide whether or not for yourself that those words or behavior are hurtful and harmful to you. And then you go from there. Mind reading whether or not they meant to do something that's a sticky territory that I used to live in, where I would decide, okay, they didn't mean to, so I guess it doesn't really count. And it did count. It did count.
It did count. Because it slowly erodes the trust and intimacy in the relationship.
Absolutely. There it is. This comes straight from the Love and Abuse podcast that I was just binging before this. And I should have got that guy's name because now I look like a jerk for not saying his name, but it's a fantastic podcast. And he was talking about intent. And it's interesting because he came from the point of view of someone who would identify himself as previously struggling with being kind of controlling and maybe even abusive in relationships. And he was saying, what was he saying about intent that was so great? It was like, oh, Jimmy, I totally just lost the point. I just jumped on a train thinking I was going somewhere great. This will come back to me later.
Okay, I guess think about
the only thing I can, I will. And other people, your next podcast after this will be the Love and Abuse podcast.
Yeah. Okay. Goodness. Let me quickly, no, you're fine. I do that all the time. Well, I should have said earlier, if you feel like you're in an abusive relationship, I'll put the number down at the bottom of the screen, but don't be afraid to reach out. Please reach out to somebody, a therapist or a hotline or something. The last thing we would ever want is for you not to feel like you have resources to talk with someone about what you're going through, because we don't want you to go through it alone. Can I just jump?
I got it.
Go ahead. Yeah. Oh, please.
I got it. I think it was something along the lines of the other person doesn't get to decide whether or not they hurt you, right?
So good.
So we don't even care about intent. Intent doesn't even matter. If you were hurt, you get to decide that for yourself. And anyway,
Intent
and that's
doesn't,
it.
Intent
It almost doesn't
negate
matter.
Impact.
Yeah, it doesn't negate hurt feelings, or in the legal definition of abuse, it has to be intentional. But we're not talking about legality here. We're talking about connection, relationships, and feelings. And feelings get hurt whether people meant to hurt your feelings or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if this would be helpful, but because I don't know if this is if anybody's actually listening that would do this, but that kind of goes along with when we get our feelings hurt, that we shouldn't be out there labeling our partner as abusive. You know what I mean? Like, you're so abusive because you hurt my feelings. Like, that's a slippery slope as well. You know, like, be careful. This isn't a word that we should just be throwing around. Since you hurt my feelings, therefore you're abusive. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
well, you know what can be more effective too is if we talk more and focus more on the behavior and not the person, right?
Yeah. Simply, this behavior hurts me.
Exactly. And not saying you're being abusive, but this behavior is hurtful to me. And that's it. That kind of helps the other person save face too. They don't have a need to get nearly as defensive, you know?
Yeah. So let me list real quickly. I'll go through these quick because we don't want to spend time. It's like we've already talked about. We don't really need to get down to complete nitty gritty, but sometimes it's just nice to hear examples. So let me go through these examples. This is examples of potential abuse. Gaslighting. You're imagining things. I never said that. Over and over again, that becomes psychological abuse. Belittling. We talked about making jokes about someone's looks, especially. There's no place for making jokes about somebody's look. I've never joked about my wife's body. Never in the history. I can't even imagine why anyone would do that other than to create a power imbalance in the relationship, to show that, to try to bring you down so that you won't leave or I'll feel more important, whatever the case may be. There's no excuse for making jokes about someone else's body. Threats of abandonment. Like, if you don't do that, then I'm leaving you. Like, these are just immature ways of handling the situation. Verbal abuse. We've talked about that: name calling, yelling, mocking, using the silent treatment. That's abusive. I mean, it's just not. And now this is one of those things where it would fit into the categories where you talked about, where it's like, ooh, but I do the silent treatment, and so we don't want to. Well, I wasn't being abusive. We have justifications, right? Well, I've given my wife the silent treatment. Why? Because I felt like, well, one, I was hurt by what she said. I didn't want to engage with her. When I did engage, the conflict didn't go well. I felt like I was just wasn't being heard. So I was like, you know what? Screw it. Fine. I won't talk to you. How about that? How about I just not talk to you we're not one of those couples that goes days, but the day, like, all right, I'm just not going to text you. I'm not going to talk to you. And then later she's like, you're not going to talk to me. And it's like, well, I'm frustrated. I'm mad. Like, I'm mad at you, and I can't express that anger because we can't have a healthy conflict where I feel like I'm safe to express that. So no, I'm not going to talk to you. Now, other people would look in, well, you're not giving her the silent treatment. That's because she wasn't being yada, yada. And now we're back to a courtroom. But the point is the silent treatment is not, it's not okay. It's a signal. It's a sign that something's going wrong in the relationship. And especially if you're giving the silent treatment in order to, I mean, if we really want to get down to it, I was giving her the silent treatment to manipulate her because I wanted her to react to me. And I essentially wanted her to say, it seems like you're hurting, or it seems like you're upset. Let's talk about it.
This other gem from the Love and Abuse podcast, he actually specifically mentioned the silent treatment. And he was trying to figure out whether or not his actions were abusive toward his partner, because he was realizing that he kind of had a lot of behaviors that he needed to work on. And he would try to ask himself, is this thing that I'm doing to my partner in order to hurt them so that they change their behavior? And in regard to his giving his partner the silent treatment, he realized he was like, I'm trying to hurt her feelings so that she doesn't, I'm punishing her so that she doesn't do this to me again. And that's how he knew that what he was doing by giving her the silent treatment was actually an abusive behavior intended to hurt, to make a changed behavior.
I think I would say the same thing. I think I was trying to hurt her. I mean,
and I have too, Jimmy. I have too in my past.
Yeah. And so, but what I had to realize was, okay, so you gave the silent treatment. You didn't feel, I mean, at the end of the day, yes, you were trying to hurt her, but what was my main goal? My main goal was that I didn't feel safe to bring up concerns or complaints. I didn't feel safe in this relationship. You know what I mean? I didn't feel, I was angry, and I didn't feel like my partner cared about that anger. Now, does that mean that justifies hurtful behavior? No, but it gives me a clue into like, okay, but like something's off here. So like, let's work on that. We have to work towards that. And if you're like, yeah, but my partner doesn't want to work towards that, well, then we would be going on a tangent that Ricky and we talked about ad nauseum on lots of different episodes, which is just like, well, then your relationship is slowly falling apart. If you're like, well, my partner doesn't care about my hurt feelings. Okay, well, then you won't ever feel safe in this relationship. Trust and intimacy is just going to erode, down to nothingness. So that's not an option. That's where Ricky does such a good job at being like, okay, but this is where we put our foot down. These are one of those foot down moments where it's like, hey, we need to have a hard conversation. Because I care about our relationship so much. And if we can't have hard conversations, if I can't have a hurt and bring it up to you and you not invalidate, dismiss, shut down, leave the conversation, belittle me in some way, then this relationship doesn't feel good for me. And I think you want this relationship to feel good for me. I hope that that's your want for me. So we have to figure this out together. And if you don't believe that your partner wants you to feel good in this relationship, then that's a dangerous place to be. Then you might be in an abusive relationship that you need to, that the boundary needs to be you taking space from, not you putting your foot down.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also, Jimmy, that might be a great example of one of those things that, one of those nuanced situations where, in your example where you were giving the silent treatment, you said, well, it was only because I didn't feel listened to. I think those kinds of, well, it was only because is one of the ways that people try to justify abusive behavior.
Yeah.
I feel like almost anyone who does anything that's hurtful to someone else has a phrase, well, I only did that because.
100%.
So one, it can be true that the thing that is being performed is abusive, for example, the silent treatment. And two, it can also be true that the other person has made a situation where it's really, you're like, oh, this is my only option. But but abusive behavior is never the only option. We've got other options that we're going to talk about either right now or later on in the podcast. I don't know which. Other things that we can do besides abusive behaviors.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of people, those abusive behaviors are their only tools that they know in order to make them feel heard or understood or seen,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
So I would love to hear more about that. Let me get through these examples, and then I would love to hear.
Let's do that.
I would love to hear you talk more about that. I'm sure I'd have a lot to add. So financial abuse is a big one for people, like forbidding a partner to have a job or have access to money, keeping all the accounts secret, running up debt without somebody knowing. That's financial abuse. They have here digital abuse. I've never heard about that one, but that's kind of like demanding passwords from people and punishing people if they're not going to be transparent. Transparency should be a choice. You shouldn't be demanding, or going on snooping on somebody's phone. We've talked about this numerous times where in a healthy, safe relationship, I believe your partner, a healthy, safe, committed relationship, your partner should have access to that stuff, but they should not be snooping. My wife never snoops on my phone, even though she can go on my phone right now and look through anything that she wants because I trust her, but she doesn't use that trust to overstep. So physical abuse is obviously one that we all recognize with abuse: hitting, choking, throwing things at someone. That's actually a big one that we don't really talk about a lot. It's just like throwing things in the house or throwing things, breaking things.
Oh, that's the same. In my mind, it's the same as physical abuse. Yeah. Because it's the threat of bodily harm.
Yep.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Not letting somebody leave. Like if you, like, I hear this all the time. Somebody's like, I think we need to take a break. Things are getting heated. And the other person's like, I'm not letting you. Like they follow you. They block the doorway. That's not, that's extremely dangerous. Sexual abuse is obviously, unfortunately, terribly too common. We're pressuring, coercion, guilt tripping. And then we also have spiritual abuse, which is like, hey, God wants you to obey me. Like, submit. God wants you to submit. So as a Christian, let me just say that is not reflective in the scriptures, even though you might view the Bible as a, very patriarchal, which I can totally understand. The Bible is actually very, very clear that passage, I believe, comes out of Ephesians, and where it says, wives, submit to your husbands. But if you flip like a page later, it says, both of you should be submitted to Christ. So there isn't a one side. It's, it's you can extrapolate that to say, and men have for centuries, I'm sure, which is like, well, wives need to submit to their husbands. It's like, okay, sure. But he also calls you to submit to God. Like, how's that going? Like, how's that going for you? Like, are you submitted to the way that you love others as the way Christ loved you? Like, are you following that? Because,
right. Which would include your wife, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we have to be extremely careful. I don't think there's any room for a husband to ever say, well, God wants you to submit to me, like that. There's just no room for that. So those are the quick examples of terrible things that people have to go through in their relationships. So let's hear about some of those tools that you had.
Well, before we do tools too, let's take a little side quest into, I think, and this seemed to pop up a lot on a lot of the podcasts that I sampled before this one, that a lot of the abuse that takes place in relationships is not so easy to pinpoint, Yeah. Maybe most of it is something that makes us scratch our head and go, was that abuse? Like it felt awful, but I'm not sure, because I can't read their mind and I don't know their intent. It sure felt awful to me, but I don't know, is that actually abuse or not? Yeah. So if you might be able to help me, Jimmy, let's think about some of the things that that could fall into the umbrella of abuse, but they're not so easy to put our finger on, right? Like if my husband were to slap me, clearly that's abuse. That's very easy to see. But if he rolls his eyes when I try to bring up a topic that's really important to me, is that abuse? Right? Those are the kind of questions that I get.
What came to my mind was mocking. Mocking is just like kind of a under the umbrella of just like invalidation. And most people probably wouldn't classify it as abuse, but I think chronically mocking your partner is abusive. But chronic
silent treatment can be abusive too.
100%. Yeah. It's the chronic presence of these patterns without any remorse or repentance. Right. But you hit the nail on the head when you said it sure did feel awful in my body.
There it is.
That's the nail on the head.
There it is.
If something feels awful in your body, then sometimes we take that and we bring it right up to our brain and we start to intellectualize and try to figure out, well, maybe what was their motive? Was there an intent here? What did I do to maybe, how did I contribute to this dynamic? When really we need to stay focused on the body. This felt awful in my body. I mean, step one is, does my partner care that something happened that felt awful in my body? Because I want to be in a loving relationship. If Emily came to me and said, something happened and it felt awful in my body, I would say, oh no, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, you care too, because that's what love cares. Love cares.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying I don't care.
No,
I would care too.
But I'm just saying, that that's the relationship that I need everyone to be in. I can't have you in a relationship where you're like, something felt awful in my body, but I can't bring that up to my partner, or I'm too scared to bring that up to my partner. Sometimes it's not even our partner they didn't do it maliciously, and maybe they're not even being abusive. Something felt awful in our body, and we still are terrified to bring that up to them because of our past, and because of our fears of abandonment, because of our fear. I get a gold star in avoiding conflict. Even if my partner wasn't being abusive, if something felt awful in my body, I still did not feel safe to bring that up. And that has to change too.
Yes. My new policy with myself, these last wonderful years where life has been so much closer with my partner and easy for me, is if something feels awful in my body, I'm not going into my head for 1 second to try to figure out why it happened or if it really was abuse or not. If it feels awful in my body, it's getting talked about with my partner. Full stop.
So good.
Right?
So
and
good.
whether he's cool with that conversation or not, I don't care. We're talking about it. And I've told him many, many times, if something that I do or say feels awful to you, I want to know about it. Even if I get defensive, right? Even if I don't seem to be receiving it well, I would like you to keep telling me what's going on, because I'm letting you know now in this calm, happy state where we're connected with each other. I always want to know, even if I seem like I don't.
I love that. I love that so much. Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to talk about tools, I guess, right?
Yeah, why not? I feel like we've exhausted everything else.
It does. I know it does feel like that, doesn't it? Except now I'm blanking on the tools because I don't have them written out for myself. Maybe you can start us off and I can riff off of that.
Sure. Where do you want to go? Give me a general talk, general direction.
Okay. I guess I'm imagining that our listener is someone who their only tools for change would be the silent treatment or nagging about something, or right. Let's talk about some other ways that we can enact change or stand up for ourselves or call attention to the situation without using silent treatment or yelling or right.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of goes back to a little bit about like Ricky and I always end up getting into like conflict resolution because it's so important in our relationships. But yeah, it kind of goes back to, instead of the silent treatment or instead of feeling powerless in this dynamic, if you do assume that your partner cares when you have hurt feelings, like I feel awful in my body, but I do believe my partner cares, but I also don't know how to bring it up in a way that they're not going to get defensive or take it as an attack. Or you can believe both of those things at the same time. Like my wife, I believe that she cares about something that is hurt in me. She still struggles with avoidant attachment. So if I bring something up, she immediately drops into shame and I'm a failure and he's angry at me, which triggers me. And so it's very, very difficult for her to stay present and emotionally engaged because she can get so triggered, and she can hear me saying, you failed in some way, when really I'm just saying, hey, can we tweak something? Cause this didn't sit right with me. So we all have those triggers that we're working through where we might get a little bit defensive, as Ricky has admitted so courageously before that. So my point is that when I bring something up, I try to do it in a way that reminds her that we're on a team. So it's like, hey, I know that you care about when something bothers me, and I certainly don't want you to feel like I'm attacking you. You didn't do anything wrong, but can I talk about something that just didn't sit right? But I have this energy of like, I want us both to win. I want us both to feel more connected. I certainly don't want you to feel attacked. I was just hoping if you could listen to me real quick and help me figure this out together as a team, in a sense, because that at least sets them up to give them the best chance to not feel like I'm attacking them.
Yeah, man, that's a good one. That's a good, I felt it even when you said it just then. I was like, he really cares about both people in that conversation and wants, wants things to change for the better. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
But what I don't want to happen is people to feel like they have to do that and then their partner still like can't respond well. Because like I do believe that it takes two people. My wife has worked really hard to be able to learn how to validate and empathize and listen instead of dropping into her shame. So and I don't believe our relationship would have survived if she didn't learn those skills, and if I hadn't learned the skills of communicating.
Yeah.
So they're both vital in my opinion. If I had two people in front of me and one was like, well, I'm willing to soft start up, as Gottman's would say, like I'm willing to figure out a way to bring this up so that they don't feel attacked, but they still don't know how to listen. They still just look at me with a blank face, or they shut down, or they say, I'm being irrational. You're making too big of a deal about nothing. I would say, oh, okay, well, that isn't compatible with a connected, like if you want a relationship where this person, where there's love and safety and trust, then you can't. Then we have to change that. You both have work to do. One person can't be the only one trying to pull this whole relationship along, because that person will eventually burn out.
Yep. I totally agree with that. I've got a tool, another one. My partner and I, we don't do this as much anymore, but it was really helpful in the earlier part of our relationship when we had a lot of kinks to iron out. Every night at the end of the night, we would say one thing that went well for us, one thing that we would like to be working on. And there's my balloons.
For anyone that's watching this poor Ricky on her iPhone has it set to the reactions or whatever. So a bunch of balloons just popped up.
I just had a balloon parade. Okay. I'll try to do this without any gestures. We say one thing that went well for us in the day, one thing that we would like either both of us or one person to work on. And then another thing that went well, that really helped cushion against defensiveness. When you're riding on some of those compliments and feeling like things are going well, it was easier for myself or him to receive that critique or request. It also gave the more timid person, which was me, space to make requests or to say, hey, this thing really bothered me, which was really terrifying for me back then. Maybe that's why we don't do it as much anymore, Jimmy, because I just say that stuff straight up right when it happens all the time now. But back in the day, I needed the day to go really well and smoothly. And then at night, I had that opportunity to say, okay, here's what I really loved in the day. Here's what kind of hurt or didn't work out so well. And then here's another thing that I really loved. Can we work on the thing that really hurt? And he would always say, absolutely.
And that makes all the difference. It's a receptiveness from that other partner. It's that makes all the difference. What I wanted to say was set a standard before things. I'm a big proponent. I don't know if people like this advice. I don't usually hear a lot of people say that it resonated, but I still think it's great advice. Set a standard before you're in conflict for how you want to navigate conflict together. It seems really stupid.
That's amazing.
It seems really simple. But why would we not do that? Why are you trying to navigate how to handle a conflict in a conflict? Why aren't you talking about this beforehand? Like, it's so silly. We would never handle a job that way. We would never handle an important task that way. We would map it out. We would, okay, here's what your assignment is. Here's what you need to figure this out. Why would we not? You need to be setting a standard, especially if there's patterns of abusive behavior, but you don't believe your partner's abusive and you want this relationship to be safe, and you both have a common goal of like, no, we actually want this to be a loving relationship. Okay, great. So then you need to set a standard for how you're both going to treat each other and what you're going to do when things get off the rails before there's any major problems. You know what I mean? And so
no, that's spectacular. What a tool. It's something that my partner and I did. We had some ground rules for fighting. Ground rules.
Perfect.
And that's what we called it. And it was, because our fights in the beginning, I'm really not proud to admit, they definitely, there was name calling from both sides. I was equally guilty of that. Name calling, and our voices were raised, and our fights they felt so awful and they were not productive. And we established some ground rules for fighting where it's like, hey, if anybody's voice starts getting too loud, the fight's over. We're taking a break. We're taking a break from this conflict. If anybody throws a name out, the fight's over and we're coming back to it later when we're both calm. And there's lots of ground rules and you can establish that for yourself. But we were finding the things that we did that didn't feel good for one or both of us. And we were saying, hey, this is our ground rule. The fight stops as soon as we see this behavior.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, I don't mean to harp on people, but you could have told me all this information and I still would have been scared to, like, you want me to set ground rules with someone who's like mistreating me and who I'm afraid to lose. You understand what a dangerous cross section you're in? This person's mistreating me and I'm also terrified to lose them. So what are you going to do? Well, if you're terrified to lose somebody, you're going to overlook all this stuff. You're going to be so conflict avoidant. And all we're trying to do, because there's at least one of you out there that's like that. And you're like, I don't know what to do. I'm so stuck. Like, we can have so much compassion for you. We can love you so much and still tell you, like, you're on a dangerous path in your relationship. You can't just keep being terrified of your partner and how they're going to react. And it's just never going to lead to the relationship that you ultimately want. And we can validate how scary it is, but we also, like your big brother and sister, like, we care too much about you to let you overlook and dismiss and make excuses for and stay in unsafe situations when we know what's possible for you. We want the best relationship possible for you.
Totally. And we've been there. I can think back to the early days of my relationship with my husband, Chris.
Yeah.
And if we had never set those ground rules and I had just said, okay, well, if we're going to fight, it's going to be, I don't want to rock the boat, so I'm just going to let him fight however he wants. We'd have continued having fights like that. Yep. And the best case scenario there would have been, I'm still in a relationship with him, but I feel miserable and can't bring anything up because we can't fight because fights feel so awful. That's the best case scenario if you don't do anything about that. Yep. So, we don't, Jimmy and I definitely don't want that for you. I think for myself, nothing in my life of relationships ever got better or even good until I realized that I was willing to let a relationship go if it meant standing up for what I needed. I mean, that's easy. That's way easier to say than do. It was 100%. One of the hardest things I've ever done, but I thought I finally got to a point where I realized that I'd rather be alone than feel stuck in a relationship where I wasn't an equal or cared about in the same way that I cared about them.
Oh, you're 100% right. You'll never feel more alone than in a unhealthy, unsafe relationship. Yeah, absolutely. I think this was really helpful.
Those were 3 awesome tools. Do we just stop while we're ahead, or do we?
Yeah, I think we do. I think this was really helpful, and I don't know. I think we did a good job at balancing the nuance because this is really a sensitive topic and
very, very sensitive.
It really
very
is.
Sensitive. Maybe hard to listen to. I hope that you guys listening aren't like, wow, that was hard to hear. Because sometimes that stuff's hard. It's hard for me to talk about having some experience with it, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard in a good way. It's like, it's hard to listen to, but I needed to listen to it. That's what I hear sometimes. Yes.
Sometimes it's hard in a good way. That's a good way to put it.
I like that. I wouldn't make a t-shirt that says that though.
No, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't wear it either. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the episode though. Again, to our diehards. Jimmy, do you have anything that's happening right now that you want to let people know about in case they're looking for more of you? No?
I'm trying to get better at putting out YouTube videos. I put one out on a trauma bond this week.
Long form?
Yeah.
Like long ones?
On YouTube, yeah. And then my one before that was if you shut down during conflicts, you should watch this. It was all about just like people that really struggle. You might have a more avoidant attachment. And if you just find yourself shutting down during conflicts, or you don't have an avoidant attachment, but you kind of, what I talked about earlier, where it's like, you're just tired of being yelled at. You're tired of the conflicts going nowhere. So when a conflict arises, you just tend to shut down, or you tend to like just not want to engage because you don't have any faith that this is ever going to work. Or you're just the classic shutdown stonewall where you get emotionally dysregulated and you don't know how to show up and be present. So I did a long form episode on that, how to stay present and how to get out of that emotional dysregulation. And if you're in the other camp where you're just like, I just feel like I shut down because there's no point in talking. My partner doesn't care about my perspective. Well, what should you do? So, I don't know. I'm trying to make more
tools.
I'm trying to make more long form videos on YouTube to really get down to the nuance of stuff, so that's fun.
Cool. That is one of the great things about these long. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have. I'm just.
Are you writing
me.
Are you writing a book currently?
Kind of.
Well, that's exciting.
What's
it about?
I feel like I always have several different ideas going, but I don't ever like to talk about them unless I've really launched into it, because I'll jinx it. I mean, if anybody out there is any kind of an artist, they understand. As soon as you tell people about the idea, it's like you kill the idea and you've lost all motivation for it. So
don't tell us, please.
I got to keep it a secret, but I am working on something right now, so that's exciting. And as soon as it becomes kind of ironclad and not so fragile, I'll definitely drop more information on a podcast episode here. Yeah. Thanks for saying that though, Jimmy. That's awesome. I've been hoping to maybe do some more collaborations with some of our friends. Jimmy and I have stumbled upon a pretty excellent group of friends in this space. Yeah. So collaborations with them can be a lot of fun. That's something I've been looking into.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, but I don't have any specifics to share right now. Maybe I did want to ask if you had any books to recommend for folks who wanted more information about abusive relationships.
I haven't read any. I haven't read any specifically on abuse yet. I want to though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I guess I wanted to give folks.
That would be pretty.
Yeah, I mean,
they
can be
obviously.
really heavy. I wanted to give people a little bit of a warning. Fresh off of my divorce, I stumbled into quite a few books on abusive relationships. And I gotta say, unfortunately, a lot of them can be really persuasive in a way that is almost kind of predatory, right? Like some of these books are preying on our anger or, our desire to blame people for things. I have a lot of friends who will go through a breakup and they'll latch on to some book that has narcissist splashed all over the pages. And, it doesn't seem to ever make anyone feel better. So I wanted to make some book recommendations that maybe I didn't think would do that. Maybe, but so I think it's really important that we look at the qualifications of the person writing it. That's weird of me to say as someone who does not have a psychology degree, with my podcast host who also does not have a psychology degree, but you really want to be careful that the information that you're reading about abuse is coming from somebody who is not just trying to profit off you reading the book, right? Like maybe they have a background that shows that they've really put a lot of their time and life into helping people with this. For example, a marriage and family therapist or a doctor of psychology. Don't get me wrong; those people can also be trying to profit off people. But I think that's important. I don't know. Do you have something?
No.
I don't want people to fall into the trap. Yeah, I don't want. I know you do. I don't want people to fall into the trap that I did, and a lot of my friends have, where you're just kind of looking for someone to blame because you're hurting.
So good.
And
they do a really good job at villainizing your partner.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so it's easy to fall into that trap. Let me just say that it's easy. I know it was easy for me to villainize my wife. It's always easy to villainize our partner. So we have to hold two truths at the same time. We can understand that that what we're learning about, maybe from this podcast, you're like, my partner does a lot of those things and I'm willing to take accountability. I'm willing to repair, but my partner isn't. And maybe this is one of the first times, I mean, I doubt it, but maybe this is one of the first times where you're just like, I'm recognizing that there's a pattern of mistreatment in this relationship. And so we can in both, we can hold that in one hand of like, I'm glad that my eyes are starting to be opened, that there's a pattern of mistreatment and I need to do something about this. I need to stop blaming myself. I need to stop making excuses. I need to learn how to set some healthy boundaries, or I need to maybe even learn what it would look like for me to exit from this relationship. But also on the other side, I'm not going to just fall into the trap of just villainizing this person and then staying stuck in this cycle where I don't, because that would lead us to not taking, accountability for maybe our reactions. Like, for instance, my silent treatment, which Ricky brought up really well, which is like, well, I wouldn't do that if they would just blank. It's like, okay, but do you recognize that this is still hurtful? Like, you're hurting them because you're hurt. Well, yeah, but I wouldn't, but they did it first. We're not kindergartners anymore. We're not going to do they did it first.
Right.
We're going to go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to take responsibility for the fact that I'm giving you the silent treatment. I'm going to realize why I'm doing it and what I was hoping to get out of it. And then I'm going to find a more vulnerable approach. And if that doesn't work, which it might not, then I'm going to figure out what I need in this relationship. Like, I'm going to have an honest conversation with myself maybe first about like, oh, this relationship isn't actually a safe relationship. That stinks. But like, what am I going to do now? I'm not just going to villainize them. I'm not just going to,
Right. Okay, that brings up an excellent point. When you're on Amazon or wherever you buy books, here are some titles that did not help me, right? Like surviving narcissistic abuse, like that. Like, don't get me wrong, I've read a lot of stuff like that. They did not help me. They didn't help me to feel better about my role. They didn't help me to feel better and more resolved about the other person, because there's a lot of mind reading and accusations. What's another title? Like, I don't know. Another one I'm really conflicted about was Too Good to Leave, Too Bad to Stay. I read that book. I really enjoyed it because I was hurting and looking for reasons to justify leaving. Sure. That's another. But here are some kind of books that really did help me, right? The Art of Everyday Assertiveness. Speak up, say no, set boundaries, right? So, what's another one? It was like a 21-day self-love challenge, right? There was another one that was, man, so many books on assertiveness. You guys, I cannot speak enough. If you're having trouble talking to somebody because they're like, oh, they won't listen to what I'm saying, man, grab yourself an assertiveness book, because it's really hard to shut somebody down when they say things assertively. Like,
I love that.
Anyway, I won't go too far into that.
You should do something on it. You should write a book on assertiveness. Okay, was that the thing? I'm so sorry. I don't want to spoil it. You really should.
That was not the thing, but I do love, you're right. I do love
You're passionate about it, and I'm passionate
am.
about listening to you be passionate about it.
Well, thanks. And I do think that is one of it's a massive tool in communication.
And it touches on everything. The reason why we're not assertive is because we're scared of this and that, and we're fear of abandonment and all that stuff. It ties into anxious attachment perfectly.
It does. Okay, I'll put it in my idea notes. But if you're finding books that are going to be directly addressing your self-esteem and your self-worth and feeling good about yourself and the things that, like a book maybe exploring your values and what you want in a relationship, that's the kind of stuff that made me feel better and stronger. Looking for reasons why my ex partners sucked never made me feel better. It never made me feel like more able to find a healthy relationship, even though I thought it would. Didn't. But finding more reasons to love myself and the ground, getting more solid about the ground that I stood on and what I wanted. Those are the things that made me feel better and helped me transform the tumultuous relationship that I was in, which was with my husband, Chris.
Really well spoken.
So there, right? Be careful when you're shopping for books, that you're not looking for reasons that you're right or trying to find trying to be a victim or find a villain. Look for books that help you become a better version of you if you want out of that cycle. That's all I got on that.
Well said.
Kids
are coming home any second, so we'll have to.
Got it. Okay, so we've run out of time for today, but thank you guys for joining us, and we'll be back again real soon.
Yeah, thank you guys.